Hello and welcome to today's grand incident. Flash games were a large part of my internet experience growing up, and I'm sure that applies to many people as well. Be it leisure time at home, or goofing off in the school's computer lab, there was always a Flash game you could pull up and waste plenty of time in. As you probably already know, the Adobe Flash Player was discontinued back in 2021. However, many people used the remaining time in 2020 to compile and archive as many different Flash works as they could. And of course, that includes the Touhou ones. That's what I wanted to talk about today. A collection of Touhou Flash games that were collected and archived. So without further ado, let's take a look at what Touhou fan games exist within the world of Flash. Let's start with Beventlaid. Beventlaid? Whatever the heck it's called. A puzzle game with the UFOs, where you connect 3 of the same color, or 1 of each color to clear it. Works just like the actual game. Glass UFOs are cleared when touching a cleared row, and using a bomb clears them all. When the combo window ends, the board fills back in, and the game ends when you run out of time. Life. It's actually pretty addictive once you get the hang of it, though I wish it let you do more than 3 of a kind at a time. By the way, now's a good time to mention that the majority of these games are in Japanese, so mostly everything I explain will come from my experience playing it. So if I missed something, sorry. Though, given the simplistic nature of Flash games in general, I doubt it'll be much of a problem. Next is Butterfly Flies for Fry, a game about feeding Yuyuko. Your mouse acts like a spotlight, and the farther away from Yuyuko it is, the faster she moves. You eat the mochi and dodge bullets. You also try to eat Mistia, but you can't catch her at the speed in which you could see the heinous act commence, which is honestly for the best. Next up is Chirno's Ramune Blast, 3-stage rocket. You shake the bottle, select your angle, and pop the bottle to blast off. You get 3 bottles, and the goal is to blast Chirno into the greater unknown, because soda bottles are just that capable. Pretty fun game. Reminds me somewhat of that Kirby minigame, Megaton Punch, though this one can certainly tire out your arm. Just don't take too long, or Apollo won't be the only 9 to land on the moon. Next up is Chirno's math training that makes your brain become 9. You get simple addition questions with 2 answers, and the goal is to select the incorrect answer, unless the correct answer is 9. The game gets faster over time, and it's easy to click the correct answer on reflex. Though in playing through it again for footage, I got pretty good at it, which is maybe just a bit worrying for me. Next up is Dr. Yagokoro, a Dr. Mario type of game with a bit of a twist. Instead of moving the pills, you move the viruses, and make chains of 3 with them to score, though you can click the pills to flip the colors. Kaguya's viruses seem to be just as immortal as she is, and Dr. Yagokoro will continue to throw pills down her throat at an increased speed until they start coming back up. Kaguya's viruses will never go away, so unfortunately for the good doctor, the game can only end once she's charged for medical malpractice. Next up is Fura Fura Flan, another match 3 game done by attaching the gems to Flandre's wings. What's neat about this one is you also have to balance the distribution of gems to prevent Flandre from falling over. Matching 3 breaks the gems, which can drastically affect the weight distribution. It seems that you don't actually need 3 of a kind for this one, as long as the first and third gems match. The one between them will shatter. I'm not very good at this, and it's super easy to start panicking once Flan starts teetering, but it's a neat idea regardless. Next is Squeeze Kaboom Cleaning, and I'm gonna be frank, I have no sweet clue what is happening here. The how to play is 7 pages of moon ruins. I got the general idea of moving and attacking, and while the title seems to suggest the objective is to clean, everything is destructible. I got to the end of the first stage and was attacked by a desk and died. I'm afraid I'll never see any more than that. But well, if I wanted to experience more hostile furniture, I'd just start speaking Swedish at an IKEA. Next up is Touhou Kamuiden, a version of the first Touhou game, highly responsive to prayers, except you play as Shinki. It plays exactly like it too, though I couldn't seem to get the bomb to work. I like that since she doesn't have Reimu's rod, Shinki swings her ahoge. I also like that when you pause or finish a stage, Shinki turns around to wave at the player. There seems to only be 5 stages, and the boss fight is against Mima. She even has spell cards to use. Sort of. So yeah, cute little game, but not much else to say. Next is Ibuki Suika's Million Oni Iron Fist Megaton Punch. It's Megaton Punch with 3 characters to choose from. Build power on 3 different checks to crack the earth as much as possible, and level Reimu's shrine in the process. Most of the power comes from the 3rd bit, where you build speed and release with good balance? I don't really know. I just spun it around and clicked when it flashed at the bottom. Each character has a spell card with a good release, and the music loop leads well into the selectable characters' themes. Other than that, it's simply single-player Megaton Punch. Next is Red Magic, another puzzle game. The goal is to match a certain number of red squares to break them. The number of squares required is the number in the top right. Clicking on a white square changes all its adjacent squares' colors, but not itself. And red squares cannot be changed by clicking on them. This one can take a little to get used to, since, at least in my case, I've never seen this type of puzzle where the area that you select doesn't also change its color. The amount of red squares required to clear increases over time, and there's multiple difficulties. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty enjoyable, though visually it's a bit on the simpler side. Next up is China Sculpture, a first-person shooter where you play as Sakuya, and your goal is to defeat Mei Ling. Click things to throw knives at them, fairies, bullets, and Mei Ling. Mei Ling has a few different attacks, and Sakuya has 3 HP. Gonna be real here, I am terrible at this game. I can't even beat the first stage. Thankfully, there's a practice mode so I can at least see the other attacks. But there's a secret option here I can't select, so I guess I'll never know what Mei Ling was cooking. Next up is Touhou Word Festival Spell Typing Carnival. It's a typing game that, while in Japanese, is completely playable in English. You type out the words to do damage and stop the attacks. And the enter key is a bomb for emergencies. As straightforward as it gets, though I don't know how to change your target, so watch your first letter. That said, this game has reminded me how inept I am on a keyboard. Granted, the words I'm typing out aren't exactly familiar to me. I timed out most of the attacks, and halfway into day I lost the ability to type altogether. But I think that was because I accidentally hit the caps lock. The game's only 2 stages though, so it was fine. Though I liked the idea, and wouldn't have minded more of it. Next is Marissa's Spinning Magic Cannon Circle, another 3-step mass destruction game. You can choose from 3 characters, then you draw a circle, followed by your magic symbol, then grab it and swing to emit enough power to leave this planet. The characters don't seem to differ much outside of the symbol, though for whatever reason, my score with Yuka absolutely dwarfed Marissa's. The characters here are all capable of some kind of giant laser attack, though in Tenchi's case, she's here for a slightly different kind of game. Next is Maripi, a game where you avoid Alice and her dolls and collect Marissa's things. Marissa can only attack by opening doors. She uses trampolines and is invincible while bouncing, but they have a limit to repeated use. There's 8 stages and you have 3 lives, so it's pretty easy to lose. Which means yes, I couldn't finish it. All I got from my efforts is watching Alice rub a defeated Marissa, which I'm sure for some people is the better outcome than getting Marissa's stuff back. Next up is Ehomaki Nightmare, a rhythm game where you use the number keys to play to the beat of Remilia's theme, while she attempts to eat a piece of Ehomaki. Missing notes makes Mei Ling rise until she is right up in your face, harshly judging you for your skill and your decision to play this game. I don't really understand the timing for the notes, so I get Mei Ling'd in a matter of seconds. But well, if you suck at the game, you can always just watch, because of course you can. Next is Udon Gallop, one of those infinite runner types of games starring racing. You can move forward and backwards, and you have 5 mid-air jumps you can use that come back over time. The stage changes as you progress, and it gets harder as it goes. I don't know how many different stages there are, as I only got to the 6th one. And by stage 5, the platforms are really small. Still a pretty fun one, as far as infinite runners go, that is. Next up is I'm a Half Phantom. Yomu has 10 seconds to beat Myon off the floor to strengthen it, then toss it through as many wooden blocks as possible. Hitting with good timing gives more power, and you hold left click and fling the mouse to throw. The throw is more important than the power itself, but it's annoyingly easy to overshoot the window and just not break anything. Game is still very addictive though, and I love the little cameos that can pop up in the background. Although unless you stop next to one, it's pretty much impossible to see what they are. Next up is Hopping Tenchi, an infinite climber starring Tenchi. Tenchi is constantly bouncing and has momentum. The screen doesn't auto-scroll, but falling off screen is a game over. Tenchi can screen wrap, and sometimes even clip into a platform from under it and bounce up. This can be as helpful as it can be confusing. I have no idea how high it actually gets, as I struggle to pass the space area. Still highly addictive though, and I like that the game has different game over screens based on where you fall. Next up is Splatterfaith, a parody of Splatterhouse starring Sanae. The story here is Kanako gets kidnapped by aliens, and it's up to Sanae to save her. But she can't do it on her strength alone, so she borrows Suako's hat and sets out. The game plays just like Splatterhouse. You can punch, kick, pick up weapons, the works. Although I found the slide kick was way harder to do in this one. It's 5 stages long and features a ton of parodies to different things, some a bit more obscure than others. And the stages and bosses are shortened in slightly mixed versions of Splatterhouse originals. It has a lot of faithful recreations to the main series it's parodying, but it still retains a fun level of originality to its design. It's not as difficult as Splatterhouse either, due to its shortened levels and less stages overall. It was actually my introduction to Splatterhouse in general. Back to the plot, finishing the game reveals that the whole game was actually a movie, written, directed, and starring Sanai in an attempt to gain faith. It didn't really work out, but the movie was still pretty popular. By the way, in classic Touhou fashion, this game has an extra stage that is unlocked by 1cc in the main game. 5 more stages full of parody. Well, actually by stage 3 it's basically just a boss rush, but they're exceptionally difficult, and a single game over puts you back to stage 1. It gets harder as it goes, as I'm sure you'd expect, but holy hell does it get stupid by the end of stage 3. Pretty much every boss in the main game is an easier version of one from Splatterhouse. The extra stage changes that, and it's especially noticeable with Upside Down Rumia here. If that wasn't bad enough, the next boss is a Gundam, I think. You gotta crouch or jump the missiles she shoots, then counterattack her rush. The missiles are stupidly fast, and mistiming your attack results in you getting counterattacked. I'm just gonna leave it at that, and say that if you somehow beat her, Sanai shouts cut. Turns out the extra stage was actually filming for Splatterfate 2, but it gets interrupted by the strongest bosses in the game, film critics. I have nothing to say about these two except that they are unbelievably ridiculous. But hey, at least they got a wide variety of attacks. Anyways, if you somehow win, Sanai releases her sequel, and it bombs. Whoops, not a happy ending for her. But hey, at least you can be happy that you finished it, right? Next up is Hungry Yamame, a type of 2D shooter with Yamame and Kisume. You control both characters at once, Yamame with up and down, and Kisume with left and right. Yamame has to shoot webs at fairies, and Kisume is to collect them. Some fairies drop mushrooms that make Kisume very wide, and that's about it. The fairies get more aggressive over time, and rocks that look way too similar to the background pop up, and it's game over when Yam runs out of life. Simple concept, but it's surprisingly difficult to multitask the two. I guess you don't have to collect anything with Kisume, but neglecting her kinda defeats the purpose of the game, you know? Next is So Nanoka, a 3-key rhythm game, with each key representing a character in the phrase So Nanoka. Extremely simple, with a randomly generated sheet where you go until you make a certain amount of mistakes. It's certainly weird, but not bad by any means. Though you might get sick of hearing Rumia say her line over and over. By the way, if the BPM isn't fast enough for you, you can remove Rumia's ribbon to speed it up. I cannot handle it personally, but it's a nice touch both in the mode itself and its execution. Next up is Drill Luna. You play as Luna Child, and you mash keys to drill underground. 3 keys control the left drill, and 3 keys control the right. Seems like you mash them in rotation to dig straight down, and only one set to change directions to avoid rocks and grab a power-up. There seems to be something chasing Luna too, so you have to keep digging. I can't really tell, since I was only able to play this game twice before my wrist started screaming at me to stop. Maybe there's more to it than just that, but I literally cannot dig deep enough to find out. Next up is Koga Stroll. You bounce Kogasa through the sky off of umbrellas. Kogasa's speed is tied to how close your mouse is to her, and getting multiple umbrellas in an upwards bounce counts as a combo. I wish I had more to say about this one, as it's adorable, but there doesn't seem to be much change throughout it. Granted, I only got as far as to see a single new thing to bounce off of, so who knows? Maybe there's a whole new game waiting a few minutes in that I just couldn't reach. Next up is Increasing Oni. You feed Suika gourds and avoid swallowing rocks. Hold left click to open her mouth and let go to close. Swallowing gourds increases the power gauge, and swallowing rocks drops it by a lot. Every 10,000 points, she spits up a mini Suika who becomes a spectator to the game, and they start to form towers. This game is as squishy as it is strange. Since you're not trying to eat the rocks, you're supposed to just take them to the face. Eventually, the amount of things thrown at you becomes way too much to handle, so you're struggling to chomp the gourds while trying not to swallow the 6 rocks flying around it. At least Suika doesn't seem to mind, but I still feel bad for her. Next up is the cute former capital's chocolate cave infiltration. This game has a few parts. First, Yugi breaks open the ground, then Parsi falls into it. Kisume descends to grab her, and also fills her bucket up with chocolate. Then Yamame pulls her back up. You can choose what or how much you actually want to grab, and it actually affects your ascending speed. Though even at max weight, it's pretty hard to actually lose this game. What I like the most about it is when you finish it, you get a little image based on what you chose to do, like not grabbing Parsi, coming up empty-handed, even a dramatic moment if your thread actually does get cut. Just a lot of fun presentation that makes it fun to replay. Next up is the Aki shop and their pumpkins. Minariko will display which pumpkin she wants, and then Shizuha has to select it. There's 15 rounds, you get more points by being quick, and the less time you spend looking at Minariko's request, the better your point multiplier. Incorrect guesses reduce the multiplier, but not the time. So there's nothing really stopping you from mashing. It's really simple, but like the last game, I like its presentation a lot. There's a lot of different pumpkins, and some of them have unique animations on wrong guesses. I also like that when you lose, the field just explodes. Hitting a bunch of wrong pumpkins gives an extra visual on the ending too, though it also causes the game to lag, still was worth looking at. Next up is Misty the Eel Sommelier. You control Mistia as she goes fishing in the river for eels. You hold left click when Mistia reacts, and release when the bar reaches past a certain point, with rarer catches requiring multiple rounds. There are 100 eels in this game. This is also the entire game. If you're wondering, I did in fact catch all 100 of them. It took over an hour. And yes, it's all in Japanese, so I can't even read the descriptions, though I assume most of them are just eely bad puns. Pretty fun time waster, though not much of a game, I guess. Still, the variety of eels is pretty slick. Next up is the Grassroots Network's Chocolate Mountain Assault. Kagero spins Wakasagi Hime around and tosses her into a mountain apparently made of chocolate. Mid-flight, Sekibonki will throw a tool to assist in the dig, and everything is controlled by the left click. There's a variety of tools Bonki can toss you, but if you take too long, Waggy has to breach the mountainside with nothing but her iron body. My personal favorite is the Bonki head, which honestly seems to be the best. She just looks at the mountain, and it gives way to her. Like the others, there's a bit of variety in completion images, though not as much as some of the previous games. Still, it was fun to see how many different ways Wakasagi Hime could dig into the mountain. Last up is Tei Nudange's Bunny Sobat Happy 800. You build up speed with Tei by swinging the mouse back and forth, then you click to kick Raisin to send her flying. Don't worry though, she can stick the landing. What's nice about this game is that the mouse doesn't have to stay in the window to build power, though it's still really simple regardless. Aiden has a few different poses she can be doing, but you can't kick her. Believe me, I tried. I don't really understand the context to this game, but if you kick Raisin over 800, whatever unit of measurement we're using here, flowers spout out of the ground, and a rainbow happy appears over her head. And that concludes my look into some Touhou Flash games. Of course, those are only the ones I have. Who knows how many I missed, or were actually lost. Flash is an era that many will remember fondly, and while I certainly didn't play these games when they were new, it's hard not to feel a little nostalgic when going through them. By the way, if you want to play these games yourself, I've included links to download the folders in which these games were compiled. There's some in there that I didn't talk about for various reasons, so if you feel like it, take a dive and try them out for yourself. I hope you enjoyed my look through this little piece of Touhou history, and if you choose to do so, enjoy your own playthroughs of what was looked at as well, be it an entirely new experience, or simply a trip down memory lane. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during the next incident.